I'm Not a Human has been making waves in the video game industry. It's one of the most popular indie games of the year, and for a good reason. For those of you who live under a rock, No, I'm Not a Human is a horror video game where you have to survive the increased sun activity and let other survivors into your home. The catch? Well, the sun isn't your only problem. You see, there are doppelgangers called visitors, and they will be very happy to kill the player under certain conditions. So every person that seeks shelter in your house can be a doppelganger, and you have to run daily tests to see who is an actual human and who only pretends to be one. My name is Hvll, and I'm a video game composer. I've scored multiple indie titles and released original EDM songs on indie record labels. Today we're gonna be talking about music in No, I'm Not a Human. I'm gonna show you how those songs are made, what they sound like without the creepy filter, what genres and artists inspire them, and how you can make such music for your own video game. But if you know a video game and would like me to analyze it or make something similar, leave a comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. To understand why music in this game is so fitting, we need to look at the game itself. If you're already familiar with the game, feel free to skip to the timecode you see on the screen. If not, then buckle up. The game starts with your neighbor at your door telling you that something is wrong with the sun and that you must never be alone in a house, because there are weird people walking around asking that question, and if you're alone, well, they come in and kill you. The neighbor then volunteers to stay at your house to keep you safe until let at least one more person in. Waking up the next day, you hear the official confirmation on the news that yes, some creatures that resemble humans do in fact rise from the ground and attack those who are alone. They also advise you not to leave your house during the day, and that the government has formed a special unit called Hvll to address the situation. Surely, they're on our side, right? Well, there are actually a lot of theories going around regarding this, but long story short is that Hvll could be actually behind this whole mini-apocalypse. Because if you call their number before it's officially announced, you get an interesting dialogue suggesting that the organization had been functioning long before this event. This is also evident by the accounts of other survivors who managed to escape their camps. But why did I call it a small apocalypse? You see, in the game, if you listen to the radio carefully, you can get a number for a phone roulette. The roulette basically connects you to a random person to talk to. And one of those people claims to have left the country before the apocalypse started, and they claim that there is no heat where they're staying. As you let more and more people in, you have to check your new guests for signs of being a visitor by checking their teeth, eyes, nails, ears, armpits, and so on. Each action drains your energy, so you have to be careful. Each character has an interesting backstory about how they ended up where they ended up. Take this guy for example. There are actual videos on YouTube deciphering his words. The more you talk to people, the more you learn about the world. Not to spoil the game, but it has 10 possible endings, each requiring you to meet specific criteria. For example, what can be considered a good ending requires you to only let actual humans into your house. Spooky stuff, right? But how does music play into all of this? The choice of music is very important when it comes to indie games, because a good OST, original soundtrack, can make or break the success of your game, an immersion of players, and how believable your world is. Music in this game is amazing, as highlighted in numerous reviews. It is inspired by different genres of music. For example, this particular song is inspired by Eastern European rock music of the 80s, at least in my opinion. One notable example is Toy. He is a beloved Soviet singer, the leader of one of the most influential bands in Russian history called Kino. Unfortunately, Toy passed away in 1990 in a car accident. Granted, the video game song is way more modern, but the influence is evident, at least in my opinion. So let's make something like that ourselves. First of all, you'll need a guitar to make something like this. It doesn't have to be an expensive guitar either, because today most of the sound quality depends on your plugins and mixing skills. I started with the main guitar riff of the song and processed it with CLA2A to compress it and G2R Stomp 6 for the artistic effects. Then I EQ'd it to carve out some space for the bass guitar. The bass guitar is pretty simple. It follows the guitar riff, but I cut off the low end of the bass guitar and replaced it with a layer of sub for a more controlled sound. In terms of processing, there is a compressor and an EQ. Here's what it sounds like. I also recorded 2 different guitar melodies, aka solos. Once again, some compression and GTR Stomp 6 for creative effects. Here is what it sounds like. The song evolves and introduces different instruments like drums, pianos, and strings, but right before the final climax of the song, the guitar melody changes, and later, the riff changes as well. I introduced a layer of strings and brass to support the new melody and to evoke the feeling of "I've won." But what now? Here is what it sounds like. It may look complicated, but it only has 16 layers, so it's within the quote-unquote norm. But before we move to another kind of music, the creepy one, I just wanted to let you know that all the music used in the example in this video, except for the original songs from the game, is available for download on my website. You can use it in your very own projects, free of charge. All you need to do is credit me. Anyway, back to the music. What if I told you that it actually doesn't sound creepy at all if you turn off the quote-unquote creepy filter? Here is a song that I made just like that. Let me show you how it sounds with the filter on and without it, and how you can make it yourself. To make it sound even more eerie, I lowered the chord progression by an octave. First of all, such music is designed to sound like it's coming out of an old radio. There are different ways to achieve that. If you're feeling fancy, you can buy a plugin called RC20, and it'll do 90% of the work for you. But since it costs like $100, I understand that not everyone is willing to spend that kind of money on a plugin. So here's how you can make it yourself in Ableton. Take an EQ and add a high-pass filter at around 100 Hz and a low-pass filter at around 3000 Hz. Add a chorus ensemble, switch it to vibrato, adjust the rate to your liking, but keep the amount relatively low to allow the natural sound of the piano to cut through. Maybe add a little bit of warmth if you feel like it. Add saturator and adjust to taste. I went for 1.7 decibels of drive. And finally, add vinyl distortion. Adjust the crackle volume and density to your liking. It's not complicated, so you don't really need precise numbers. Do whatever sounds right to you. I'll leave a link to download this preset in the description. The key to this kind of music, however, is making it sound uneasy. You can do that by lowering your chord progression by an octave, adding a melody that doesn't quite fit in, or quietly introducing instruments that don't usually belong in the genre. Unfamiliarity is what makes it eerie, so you have to be a little creative. Anyway, I hope you learned something from this video, or at least found it entertaining. My name is Hvll. Stay awesome and keep making this world a better place.